Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Have you ever waited for a class, a teacher, or the perfect course to finally start learning English? You told yourself next month, next year, when I have more time, when I find the right teacher. And the months kept passing. Today, that waiting ends. This lesson is simple English, but it will change how you learn forever. Not because of some secret trick. Not because of a new app, because of one shift in how you think about learning itself. Here is the promise. By the end of this lesson, you will have a complete system to teach yourself English every single day with no classroom and no teacher is standing over your shoulder. Not luck, not talent, a system. Something you can actually follow starting today. You don't need a teacher, you need a system. That's the whole shift. Most people believe the opposite. They believe progress comes from finding the right course, the right app, the right person to guide them. So they search, they download, they sign up, they quit, they search again, round and round for years while their English barely moves. Here's the truth. A teacher can guide you. A teacher can correct you. But a teacher cannot sit inside your brain and force the language to grow. Only you can do that. Every fluent self-taught speaker you have ever heard of built one thing before anything else, a system they trusted enough to repeat day after day with or without anyone watching. Think about the people you know who speak English well, even though they never lived abroad, never had private lessons, never paid for an expensive course. What do they actually have in common? It is not luck. It is not a special brain for languages. It is a structure. They built small habits and never stopped feeding them. In the next few minutes, you will learn 7 lessons, 7 pieces of a system you can build on your own starting tonight, with nothing but your phone and your time. No app subscription required, no classroom required, just you and a plan that finally works. If you're serious about finally finishing what you start, hit subscribe right now because this channel is built for people exactly like you, people done waiting for permission to begin. Let's get into the first lesson. Lesson 1. Feed your ears before your mouth. There is a businessman from Canada named Steve Kaufman. He never sat in a classroom to learn most of the languages he speaks. He learned them by listening, hours and hours of listening, long before he ever tried to speak a single sentence back. He listened to stories. Conversations filled his ears next, then things slightly too hard for him again and again, until his ear simply absorbed the shape of the language. Here's the truth. Your mouth cannot produce what your ears have never heard. Think about your first language. Before you said your first word, you spent months, maybe years just listening. Nobody handed you a grammar book at 6 months old. Your brain built the language quietly in the background long before your mouth caught up. English works the same way even now, even as an adult. If you want to speak naturally, you have to feed your ears first. Listen to native speakers tell stories. Listen to podcasts made for people just starting out. Listen to people explain things slowly and clearly. Let your brain soak in the rhythm, the sounds, the patterns before you worry about forming perfect sentences. Ask yourself something honest right now. How much English do you actually hear in a normal day? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe none at all. If your answer is small, that gap is the real reason your speaking feels stuck. Not because you are slow, not because English is too hard for you, but because your ears are hungry and nobody has been feeding them. You woke up today. You scrolled your phone for 20 minutes. You watched something in your own language without even thinking about it. That same 20 minutes spent listening to simple English would have done more for your fluency than another grammar lesson ever could. This is not about studying harder. It is about listening more. Find one show, one podcast, one channel made for learners at your level and let it become part of your day. Not for an hour, not as a chore, just enough every single day so your ears never go hungry again. Steve Kaufman did not become fluent in 20 languages by memorizing rules. He became fluent by drowning himself in input long before he ever tried to sound perfect. Your ears come first, your mouth follows later. Remember that because the next lesson builds directly on it. Start small if you need to. Put on 10 minutes of a simple spoken English while you make breakfast tomorrow morning. Understanding every word is not the goal here. Let the sound become familiar instead, the way a song becomes familiar after you have heard it enough times to hum along without even trying. Lesson 2. Choose input slightly above you. Now think about this. Not all listening helps you the same way. If you listen to something far too easy, your brain barely works and you barely grow. If you listen to something far too hard, you understand nothing and you give up after 5 minutes. The real growth happens in a narrow space in between, just above what feels comfortable. A weak approach picks the easiest video possible and stays there for months, feeling safe but never improving. A strong approach picks something just slightly out of reach, something that stretches the brain without breaking it. This idea has a name in language research. Linguists call it comprehensible input. The theory that you learn best from material you mostly understand with just enough new words and structures to pull you forward. Not material stuffed with words you already know. Not material so advanced it sounds like noise. Material that challenges you a little every single day. Picture 2 learners. The first one watches cartoons made for 5-year-olds because it feels easy and relaxing. The second one jumps straight into fast news broadcasts meant for native adults, gets lost in the first 10 seconds, and closes the tab in frustration. Neither one grows much. The first one is too comfortable to stretch. The second one is too overwhelmed to absorb anything at all. Growth lives just above what is easy. Here is a simple test you can use today. Pick a video, a podcast, or a short story written for learners. If you understand almost everything without effort, it is too easy. Move up a level. If you understand almost nothing, even with subtitles, it is too hard. Move down a level. The right material sits in that uncomfortable middle where you understand most of it, but still meet new words you have to work for. This single choice picking content slightly above your level is the reason some self-taught learners improve fast, while others stay stuck for years watching the same easy shows on repeat. It feels safer to stay easy, it feels harder to stretch, but comfort and growth rarely live in the same place. Tomorrow, before you open anything in English, ask yourself one question. Is this slightly too easy, slightly too hard, or just right? That one habit alone will reshape how fast you move forward. Think of it like lifting weights. Lifting a feather builds nothing. Lifting a boulder injures you before you even start. The right weight is the one that makes your arms shake a little by the last few reps heavy enough to demand effort light enough to actually finish. Language input works the same way. The right content makes your brain work just hard enough to grow without snapping under the pressure. Find that weight and stay with it until it starts to feel light again. Then move up. Lesson 3. Review on a schedule. Not by memory, picture this. You sat down one night and memorized 40 new words. You felt proud. You felt productive. 3 days later, you tried to recall them, and most of them were gone like they had never existed at all. That feeling is not a sign you have a bad memory. It is a sign you used the wrong method. Here's what most people miss. Memory is not a wall you build once and leave it standing. Memory is a fire that needs more wood again and again, or it quietly goes out. A psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus studied this over a century ago and found something simple but powerful. Information fades fast right after you learn it, unless you review it again at the right moments. If your goal scares you because you forget words constantly, if your motivation drops because nothing seems to stick, if you start to believe you simply were not built for languages, then listen closely, because none of that is true. You were never missing the ability. You were missing a schedule. Cramming feels productive in the moment. You sit, you push, you feel busy, you feel like you accomplished something big. Reviewing feels boring by comparison. A few minutes here, a few minutes there, nothing dramatic. But cramming creates a tall, fragile tower that falls within days. Reviewing creates a slow, steady foundation that barely cracks. A word reviewed 5 times beats a word memorized once. Here is how this works in practice. When you learn a new word or phrase, do not just write it down once and move on. Look at it again the next day, then a few days later, then about a week later. Each time you review it, it sinks a little deeper, and the gap before you need to see it again grows longer. This is not extra work piled on top of your day. It replaces the useless habit of memorizing once and hoping it survives. Most people who feel stuck in English are not lacking intelligence. They are lacking a system that fights against forgetting instead of ignoring it completely. An expensive app is not required for this. A simple notebook works. A note on your phone works. Write the word down with the date you first saw it, then check it again the next day, then a few days later, then a week later. Some people use small paper cards, 1 word per card, sorted into piles based on how well they remember each one. The tool matters far less than the habit of coming back. If this lesson is hitting you so far, hit subscribe right now, because the next 3 lessons go even deeper into the system, and you will not want to miss where this is going. Your brain is not broken. Your schedule was. Fix the schedule, and the words finally stay. Lesson 4. Speak before you feel ready. There is an Irishman named Benny Lewis who once believed he had no talent for languages at all. He failed in a school. He struggled for years. Then he discovered something that changed everything for him. He stopped waiting to feel ready, and he started speaking from the very first day, full of mistakes, full of broken grammar, full of awkward pauses. He spoke anyway. Take a breath. What you are about to hear might feel uncomfortable, but it is the lesson that separates people who actually become fluent from people who study for years and still freeze up in real conversations. You don't need a teacher, you need a system. Most learners treat a speaking like a reward they earn only after they feel fully prepared. They wait until their grammar feels solid. Their vocabulary has to feel big enough first. The fear has to quiet down before they will even try. For many people, that day never arrives because fear does not wait for you to be ready. It just waits for you to give up first. Quitters protect their pride. Learners protect their progress. A person who never speaks because they are scared of sounding silly protects their image for one more day. A person who speaks badly on purpose again and again protects something far more valuable, their forward motion. Imagine standing in front of a mirror tonight and saying 10 simple sentences about your day out loud in English, even if half of them come out wrong. Nobody is grading you. Nobody is laughing. The only person in that room is you, and you are allowed to be clumsy while you build something real. Mistakes are not the enemy. Silence is. Benny Lewis did not become fluent in dozens of languages by avoiding mistakes. He collected them by the hundreds and kept speaking anyway because every mistake he made was proof that his mouth was finally moving, finally practicing the muscle that turns knowledge into actual speech. Listening builds the foundation. Speaking is what turns that foundation into a living skill you can actually use. Starting tonight, find 5 minutes. Talk to yourself, record a voice note, repeat a sentence you heard today. It will feel strange at first. Strange is fine. Strange means you are finally doing the part most people skip. A child learning to walk falls down dozens of times before taking one steady step, and nobody calls that failure. They call it learning. Your spoken English deserves the same patience you would give a child taking their first steps, not the harsh judgment you save for yourself. Lesson 5. Design your environment, not just your willpower. Think about the dead time in your day, the walk to the bus stop, the wait in line at the store, the 10 minutes before you fall asleep scrolling without really seeing anything. Most of that time disappears, completely used by nobody, wasted by everyone. There is a woman who works night shifts at a hospital. For years, she told herself she had no time to practice between exhaustion and a schedule that never matched anyone else's. Then she changed one small thing. She put on an English podcast during her drive to work instead of music, and she started recording herself on the way home, repeating phrases she had just heard. Nothing else in her schedule changed, only the sound filling her empty minutes changed. Let me make this simple. Willpower fades by noon. Environment works while you sleep. If you rely only on motivation to remind you to practice, you will lose that fight constantly because motivation rises and falls like weather, some days strong, some days completely absent. But if you build your environment so that English simply surrounds you, you no longer need to feel motivated every single time. Change your phone's language settings to English. Follow accounts that post in simple English. Put one English podcast in your commute instead of leaving that time empty. None of these choices require discipline in the moment you make them. You set them up once, and they keep working for you automatically day after day, whether you feel inspired or not. A person relying purely on willpower decides every single day whether today is the day they finally practice. A person who designs their environment never has to decide at all, because the practice is already built into something they were going to do. Anyway, the commute, the chores, the walk, the wait. The woman on night shifts did not suddenly find extra hours in her day. She simply filled the hours that were already empty. That is the entire secret hiding inside this lesson. You are not too busy. You are surrounded by unused minutes, and English is waiting to fill them. Look at your day honestly tonight, find the dead time, then decide what sound will live there starting tomorrow. You do not need to redesign your whole life. You only need to redirect minutes that were already disappearing into nothing. The silence on a walk, the wait before a meeting starts. The last few minutes before sleep that usually go to nothing in particular. Hand those minutes to English and your environment starts teaching you without asking for anything extra. Lesson 6. Small and daily beats big and rare. Stay with me because this lesson sounds simple, but almost nobody actually follows it. There is a young man who lives in a small town with nothing but a phone and an internet connection. No money for courses, no native speakers nearby, no fancy resources at all. He decided to give English 20 minutes every single day, no matter how tired he felt, no matter how busy his week became. Compare that to someone else full of good intentions who tells themselves they will study for 3 full hours this Saturday to make up for the week. Saturday arrives, life gets in the way. The 3 hours become 1 hour, then 30 minutes, then nothing at all, pushed quietly into next week, then forgotten completely. If your plan depends on finding a big block of free time, if your plan depends on feeling motivated enough to start, if your plan depends on a perfect week with no distractions, then your plan will fail not because you are weak, but because perfect weeks almost never come. Small and daily beats big and rare. The young man with nothing but his phone kept his 20 minutes for 2 years. Some days he listened, some days he repeated sentences out loud. Some days he barely focused at all. But the streak never broke completely because 20 minutes is small enough to survive a bad day, a tired night, a chaotic week. After 2 years, he could hold a real conversation with a stranger from another country, not because he was gifted, but because 20 minutes repeated for 700 days becomes something enormous. This is the part most people underestimate. A habit that feels almost too small to matter is exactly the kind of habit that survives long enough to actually work. The 3-hour Saturday plan looks impressive on paper and dies within a month. The 20-minute daily habit looks unimpressive and quietly builds a fluent speaker over a year or two. Pick a number small enough that missing a day would feel almost impossible. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then protect that number like it is the only thing standing between you and the staying stuck forever, because in a very real way it is. Some days you will only manage the bare minimum, and that is fine. The goal was never to feel inspired every single day. The goal was to keep the chain unbroken even on the days when motivation disappears completely, because a chain that survives the bad days is the only kind that ever reaches the finish line. Lesson 7. Be your own teacher. There is a student who failed English class 3 separate times. Not once, 3 times. Teachers labeled her as someone who simply was not good at languages, and after enough years of hearing that, she started to believe it too. She stopped trying in school. She assumed the door was closed for her forever. Then something shifted. She stopped waiting for a classroom to fix her and started recording her own voice on her phone, just short, simple sentences about her day. She listened back. She winced at her mistakes. She tried again. Nobody graded her. Nobody compared her to other students. It was just her, her phone, and her own honest ear correcting itself a little more each week. Those who wait for a teacher stay stuck. Those who build a system move forward. The classroom had told her she lacked talent. Her own recordings told her something completely different. They told her exactly where her pronunciation slipped, where her grammar wobbled, where her confidence cracked. A teacher might have caught some of that too. But she did not need to wait for one, because she had built her own loop. Speak, listen back, notice, adjust, speak again. You don't need a teacher, you need a system. Within a year, the same young woman who once failed 3 times could hold a full conversation with a stranger without freezing. Nothing about her brain changed. Nothing about her talent suddenly appeared. What changed was that she finally trusted herself enough to become her own toughest, kindest critic, instead of waiting for someone else to hand her permission to improve. This is the final piece holding everything else together. You can listen every day. You can choose input slightly above your level. You can review on a schedule. You can speak before you feel ready. You can design your environment to carry half the weight. But none of it becomes a real system until you trust yourself enough to check your own progress gently, honestly, without needing anyone else in the room. You can be your own toughest, kindest teacher. That sentence is not motivational decoration. It is the actual mechanism behind every self-taught speaker who ever became fluent without a classroom. They built a loop. They trusted that loop. They kept running it long after anyone would have noticed, whether they quit or continued. Think about what that loop actually looks like in practice. You speak a sentence out loud. You listen back without flinching away from the mistakes. You notice one thing to fix, just one, not everything at once. You speak the sentence again, slightly better than before. That is the entire loop, repeated quietly, with nobody watching, nobody grading, nobody to disappoint but yourself. And somehow that quiet private loop builds fluency faster than years of sitting in a classroom waiting for someone else to fix you. Let's bring this all together. 7 lessons. 1 system, no teacher required. Feed your ears before your mouth. Your speaking will never outgrow what your ears have absorbed, so let listening come first every single day. Choose input slightly above you. Comfort teaches you nothing new, and chaos teaches you nothing at all. So stay in that narrow space where growth actually lives. Review on a schedule, not by memory. Words fade fast unless you bring them back at the right moments again and again until they finally stay. Speak before you feel ready. Waiting for confidence to arrive first means waiting forever, because confidence is built by speaking, not before it. Design your environment, not just your willpower. Fill your dead minutes with English instead of silence and let your surroundings do the work. Motivation cannot. Let small and daily beat big and rare. 20 honest minutes repeated for months will always outlast one perfect Saturday that never actually comes. And finally, become your own teacher gently, honestly, every single day, listening to your own voice the way a patient coach would, without shame, without giving up on yourself. You were never missing a teacher. You were missing a system. Now you have one. You don't need a teacher. You need a system. Picture yourself 1 year from today. Picture opening your mouth in a real conversation and hearing words come out clearly, naturally, without that old panic in your chest. That version of you is not a fantasy. That version of you is built 1 20-minute session at a time starting tonight. Not next month, not when things calm down, not when you finally find the perfect course. Tonight. None of this requires money you don't have or a teacher you can't find. It requires 20 minutes your phone and the decision to start now instead of waiting again. Waiting was never going to teach you English. Only the doing will. Somewhere out there is the version of you who never started this system, who closed this video and went back to waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect app, the perfect teacher. That version stays exactly where they are today, a year from now, 5 years from now, still waiting. And somewhere else is the version of you who starts tonight with 20 small minutes and nothing else, who keeps going on the boring days as much as the exciting ones, who becomes slowly and quietly someone who actually speaks English. Both versions are possible. Only one of them depends on something outside your control. Keep showing up for yourself like this, and you will improve your English far more than any classroom ever could. Which step are you starting with today? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know exactly where you're beginning. If this lesson gave you something real, subscribe, because there are more systems like this one coming built for people who are done waiting and finally ready to build. See you in the next lesson.